Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, and the objective of today's show is to help out Raider fans understand who could potentially be the defensive coordinator that joins Klint Kubiak. Obviously, Kubiak, offensive-minded guy, is going to be calling plays, so you might not pay attention to who he brings in as an OC. I'll say it right now. Who he brings in as a defensive coordinator is much more important than who he decides to bring in as an OC, because you're a first-time head coach. So being able to find somebody that can kind of be that head coach on the defensive side of the football is at the utmost importance. Now, these coaches are not ranked. It is simply my best guess on who I could see Klint Kubiak, new Raiders head coach, bringing to the silver and black. If you don't know, I want you to hit that subscribe button, because we're going to always keep you up to date, whether it's OCs, DCs, minor coaching adjustment. I want people to subscribe to the Raiders Report because I'm confident in this. You will become a smarter fan for the low price of $0.00 for the next 365 days. I'll bet you this right now. You hit subscribe. If you don't learn anything after a week, unsubscribe. You got absolutely nothing to lose. But there's a reason why. We're the #1 Raiders show in the entire world. We have a good time. We build a community, and you're going to get free videos every single day. Let's go to the first name here of who I think could potentially be a defensive coordinator with Mr. Kubiak. Karl Scott, the defensive backs coach for the Seattle Seahawks, and he's been there since 2022. The Kubiak connection is that he was the Vikings DB coach in 2021 when Kubiak was the offensive coordinator there in Minnesota. Also, it's got some really good ties with Nick Saban, Alabama DB coach from 2018 to 2020, was also with Texas Tech from 2016 to 2017. So this has been somebody that's been coaching, and he's been a part of the college game. He's been part of the professional game, which is really important simply because you got to be able to connect with your players, especially when you're going to be the defensive head coach of the Raiders. Let's go to another name here I'm going to throw out, Justin Hinds, or it could be Hinds, the defensive line coach for the Seahawks over the past 2 seasons. And the #1 reason why I think that defense was as good as what that defense was in the Super Bowl, it's because when you're able to get pressure with 4, it just makes everybody else so much better. Like, when you get pressure with 4 and everybody else can just be an athlete and do exactly what they need to do, it is a lot easier for those guys to go out there and execute their job. Bears assistant defensive line coach in 2022 to 2023. Also was the DC at Western Carolina in 2021. I'll be clear, I don't think that Hinds ends up coming to the Raiders, but because he did such a great job with that defensive line, I look at Justin Hinds very similar to the way that I look like a guy at Rob Leonard. And real recognize real. When you do a good job, you deserve to get a shout-out about it. Let's go to another candidate here, Chris Partridge. And I don't know if this is a name so much for a DC. Obviously, this is the defensive coordinator show. He's been the outside linebacker coach from 2024 to 2025. But what's really interesting here is Chris Partridge also was the special teams coach at Michigan. And you know that John Spytek and Tom Brady value their Michigan ties. So I actually think a sleeper candidate to be the next special teams coach is Chris Partridge. But he does come from Ole Miss, where he was a co-DC and a safeties coach from 2020 to 2022. And if I can find certain connections, I'm always going to do my best to bring it up, which is why Partridge ends up making today's show. Here's a name that I know is going to get a lot of people excited. It's former defensive coordinator of the Browns, Jim Schwartz, who was the Lions head coach in 2009 to 2013, was the Eagles defensive coordinator from 2016 to 2020. And then you got the Cleveland Browns, and it sounds like Schwartz doesn't want to be a part of this organization anymore. And one of the reasons why, if you're a Raider fan, I think getting a guy like Schwartz is really important, is because you know that he's got head coach ties. You know that he's been able to be that head coach before and really help run a great defense. And the Cleveland Browns, they're a really bad football team, but that defense led by Myles Garrett is outstanding. And if you're trying to keep Max Crosby happy, I do think by bringing in somebody like Schwartz to pair that with Kubiak, it makes a lot of sense. Because the last time I did this video, the #1 guy that I wanted was Raheem Morris. Morris obviously took the job with San Francisco, so you're not going to see him on the program. I bring that up because I'm about to ask you today's pinned comment. Who are you hoping the Raiders hire to be their next defensive coordinator? You're about to get in with a YouTube ad break. While that ad is playing, I want you to scroll on down, give me your answer. My answer coming up here right after this break. I'm going to say Jim Schwartz right now is the name that I would be the most excited about that the Raiders could bring in. Now, I'd also throw out a name, honestly, like a Sean McDermott, because at the end of the day, I want somebody that's got head coaching experience on the defensive side. With a first-time head coach like Klint Kubiak, you're going to get a lot of things thrown at you. So, let's talk about Mr. McDermott here for a little bit. Bills head coach from 2017 to 2025, 8-8 playoff record, 98-50 overall. Does have some of that DC experience, which you could see in Philadelphia and in Carolina. Well-respected leader, and there's been some former Raiders players that played underneath McDermott that said, hey, this would be a great guy to bring in as a head coach. If you know that he's getting that type of love and respect from a head coaching standpoint, I think bringing in McDermott, who's a good defensive-minded coach, bring him in to be, again, your DC and just run everything on that side of the football. Another up-and-coming coach, Al Harris, defensive backs coach for the Chicago Bears, and he's been the Bears DB and defensive pass game coordinator. He's been there since 2025. Cowboys assistant head coach and DB coach in 2024. Also has some of that AFC West experience where he was there from 2013 to 2018 with the Kansas City Chiefs. I always bring up AFC West experience because I know for a fact that it matters to Mark Davis. And if it matters to Mark Davis, it should matter to y'all as well. But if you're looking for an up-and-coming guy, this would be a little bit risky, I think, to pair with Kubiak. But I do think Al Harris is a very well-respected defensive-minded coach. We got more DC candidates coming up here in just a moment, but you already know Prize Picks is the sponsor on today's show. Prize Picks is freaking everywhere on this program. You know why? Because they're America's #1 fantasy sports app out there. They show up and show out for me, so I'm going to show up and show out for them. Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. So don't miss this chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. Find your community on Prize Picks. With the new social feeds feature, you can share Prize Picks with your friends, copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us and tailor fade our picks with just one click. So if you want to follow me on Prize Picks, I'm at Mitchell Renz 365. Join millions of users. It's available in all 50 states, and I know that the big game just happened. Well, if you're a hoop head, they also offer stacks, meaning that you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. You want to pick more on Luka Doncic, points, 3-pointers, and assists? Now you can with Prize Picks. So download the Prize Picks app today. Make sure that you use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Let's go to a name that I don't think is going to be the next DC, but the Raiders are keeping Rob Leonard, who's been their defensive line coach. And I think out of anybody on the coaching staff, and I mean this, anybody on that coaching staff that the Raiders decided to keep, the #1 guy that deserves a promotion is Rob Leonard. And I know he's one of the best defensive line coaches in the entire league. He's got 16 years of coaching experience, 13 in the NFL. Worked underneath John Harbaugh in 2020, which is important because I know that the Raiders value Harbaugh. I know that they value the entire Harbaugh family. And for the Raiders being interested in Jesse Minter, that's a Harbaugh mind, defensive mind. Could you also be interested in bringing in a guy like Rob Leonard? Let's go to another potential DC candidate, Demarcus Covington, who currently is the Packers D-line coach and run game coordinator. Here's the connection, though, with Brady. Patriots DC in 2024. I know that did not go well, and I know Brady was not a part of that organization, but because he's got some Patriot ties, co-DC at Eastern Illinois in 2016. So, again, he's been a defensive coordinator before, but he does have some overlap with Brady in New England from 2017 to 2019. And when I do this show, I'm always just going to try to give you some names to keep in the back of your mind. Here's another name to keep in the back of your mind. It's a little bit of an older name. Andre Patterson, the defensive line coach for the New York Giants, where he's been since 2022. The connection is he was on the Vikings assistant head coach and co-DC in 2021 with Kubiak. Again, Kubiak was the offensive coordinator for Minnesota in 2021. He also, though, worked with his dad. And the fact that Patterson worked with Gary Kubiak from 2019 to 2020, I do think that matters to Klint because one of the things that got brought up back last Sunday when all the news piled in that, hey, it's going to be Klint Kubiak was the fact that John Spytek and Gary Kubiak had a little bit of overlap, and Spytek was a big reason. Gary said why they won a Super Bowl in the first year. So because Andre Patterson has some Gary Kubiak ties, I just wanted to be able to throw his name out there on today's program. We got more coaches, though, coming up. We got more DC candidates than we did OC candidates because I think OC is a little bit more set in stone, where defensive coordinator is much more up in the air because, again, it's more important that the Raiders hit a home run finding their DC than finding their OC because Klint's going to be the guy calling plays. So you need to be able to bring in a defensive coordinator that you know can call plays. You know what, though? I do really feel like we're back. I feel like Raider Nation has got the right steam going, and if you're excited about having Klint Kubiak be the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, go to chatsports.com/Kubiak. That link is going to be available to y'all down in the comments, down in the description. Whether you're looking for a t-shirt, whether you're looking for a hoodie, if you are confident that Klint Kubiak is going to help Raider Nation get back, and I mean back to the winning ways, that link is down in the comments. It's down in the description of today's show. All shapes, all sizes. Chugs has the hoodie, which I was jealous of. I'm a big fan of the hoodie. I had the t-shirt I was wearing out in San Jose. Got a bunch of people giving us compliments. If you also agree that we're back, chatsports.com/Kubiak. Let's go to the next name here, and it's Steve Wilks, former defensive coordinator of the Jets. I want to be very clear. I would be pissed if the Raiders decided to hire Steve Wilks to be the next defensive coordinator of the Las Vegas Raiders. Why do I say that? Because he's been at so many different places and hasn't done a very good job. I mean, you're talking about DC experience. The Jets, 49ers, Missouri, Cleveland, Carolina. When you're one and done that often, there's usually a reason behind it. He does have some head coaching experience, which is why I'm bringing it up. And the biggest reason why I'm bringing him up is because he did work with Kubiak in 2023. So when he was the DC of the 49ers, Kubiak was also there as a pass game coordinator. It was a year that Brock Purdy really took off. Let's go to an interesting name. And this is actually somebody that I brought up last year because I had a source reach out to me and said, hey, keep an eye out for George Edwards when the Raiders hired John Spytek. And he was the Vikings DC from 2014 to 2019. And in that 2019 year, Kubiak was there with him in Minnesota. Was also the Buffalo Bills defensive coordinator from 2010 to 2011. But the fact that he worked with John Spytek in 2023, again, you got to find as many connections as humanly possible. There's obviously so many defensive coaches out there. And what I always try to do is pinpoint if I think there's a connection, I'm going to bring his name up here, which is exactly why you're seeing George Edwards. But you know what? Out of all these names on here, maybe the name that fans should want the most is the current Seahawks defensive coordinator, Aden Durde, better known as AD. I know, we struck out on AP. Maybe we can go get an AD. But the Seahawks DC since 2024, when Kubiak joined this past season in 2025, he isn't the defensive play caller in Seattle, which is why I do think that his name should be brought up. I mean, if you're Durde and you're going, why should I stay in Seattle? Mike McDonald is clearly the guy who's going to call plays there. Could you get an opportunity where you get to call plays for the Las Vegas Raiders? Now, you could make the argument that if Durde just stays in Seattle, that he'll probably get an opportunity down the road. And, you know, you're probably not 100% wrong in saying that. But sometimes windows can be short. And if Durde feels like that he's got an opportunity to be the defensive head coach and call plays, maybe he decides to follow his buddy Klint Kubiak over because they did just end up winning a Super Bowl together. Was the Cowboys defensive line coach from 2021 to 2023. He's been coaching in the NFL since 2014. And I did see that he was a DC before for the London Warriors from 2011 to 2016. So those are all the potential, I would say, defensive coordinator candidates for the Las Vegas Raiders when they bring Klint Kubiak over. As a reminder, you can always hit me up on social media. I'm at MitchellRens365. If you took a picture of me or if we were together during Super Bowl Media Row, if you hung out with us in San Jose on that Friday, if you're just looking for more Raiders content, there is nobody on planet Earth that will keep Raider Nation more up to date around OC, DC, Klint Kubiak, free agency, draft, trades, nobody than us right here on the Raiders.